In this video, we're going to be doing a lesson on lenses. Lenses is one of the most important applications of refraction. Remember that refraction is when a light ray goes from one medium to another and it bends. And that's because of the changing speeds as the light goes from one substance to another. A lens is a piece of plastic or glass that's curved in a certain way. It's a transparent material. And when light goes through it, light will refract in predictable ways. So here, for example, I know that if light goes through a lens that's this shape here, light will refract this way. But if it goes through a lens that's like this shape over here, light will go through this way instead. So we're going to study in this lesson how to do ray diagrams to find images made by lenses instead of mirrors. So lenses, they actually use refraction rather than reflection. When we saw mirrors, mirrors use reflection. When we do lenses, lenses will use refraction. And you can think of a lens like glasses, the lens in your eye, a magnifying glass. There's a variety of different applications you can already think off the top of your head. So we're going to talk about some terminology first. You'll notice there's two types of lenses we're going to be studying here. There's the converging and the diverging lenses. You can actually describe lenses based on their shape and also based on what they do to light. So this lens over here, based on what it does to light, you'll see the light comes in parallel, goes to the other side, and focuses onto one point. So this type of lens brings light rays close together. So that's called a converging lens. This type of lens over here makes light rays move farther away from each other. So that's called a diverging lens. But if you had to classify these based on shape, this shape here is convex because it bulges outwards, and this shape here is concave because it curves inwards. When we describe the images made by these different types of lenses, for the convex or converging lens, the characteristics will depend on where the object is compared to the focal point. So almost like the concave mirrors, so a little bit of opposite in terms of shape, but same thing in terms of light. Concave mirrors are converging, these lenses are converging. So converging images depend on where the object is compared to F. Whereas for this one over here, the diverging one, just like the diverging mirror, it didn't really matter too much where the image was. Where the object was, the image will always be the same. For virtual, smaller, upright, and closer to the lens. Some applications of these lenses include over here cameras, projectors, reading glasses, magnifying glasses, and over here eyeglasses and telescopes. And we'll see more examples of this later on. Here you can see an eye that has trouble seeing, and to fix that trouble, the vision problem, you have a lens. In this case, it's a concave lens that's helping the image to focus more efficiently on the retina over here, which is the back of the eye, that sends a signal to the brain. So you do need to understand how we classify lenses based on what they do to light and also based on their shapes. So we're going to go over some lens terminology with both types of lenses on the same slide here. We're going to have the converging lens and the diverging lens. You'll notice that we have a line that cuts the lens in half. That's called the principal axis. There's also a line that cuts the lens in half left to right, or that goes through this vertically. That's called the axis of symmetry. Then the middle, where the axis of symmetry intersects the principal axis, that's called the optical center, or O. You can see that here too, principal axis, axis of symmetry, and then right here is the O, the middle portion. So we saw all those pieces there. Then we're going to go over the focal points. So the focal points of a lens is interesting because there's technically two focal points. And the reason for that is because light can go through this side and through this side. So let's say your object is over here for the converging lens, then the focal point is where the light rays actually meet. So we call that the primary or principal focal point. And if this is, let's say, 5 centimeters away, that would be the focal length. On the other side, if the object was here, technically you could have a focal point here, but you don't right now because the object is over here. So we see the other side also has a focal point, or it could, and we would call that the secondary focal point, F prime. So if this is 5, then this is 5 as well. For the diverging lens, the primary focal point is basically where the rays appear to meet. So if your object is over here, that's where light rays are coming from, the rays diverge here, and traceback rays meet over here, and that's the primary focal point, whereas the secondary focal point's on the other side. So for these rays, for these lenses here, the primary focal point's on the opposite side of the lens that the object is on, because the object will be right here. Over here, the primary focal point would be on the same side as the object. So the secondary focal point will be on the opposite side of the object. And again, if you were measuring the length from here to here, that would be your focal length. So from the optical center to the focal point, that's called your focal length. If this was 5, then this would also be 5. So those are our main terms, and now that we understand the main terms, we're going to go and take a look how to draw some ray diagrams. Before we do that, I just want to establish a few rules, so you should know how to label all these here. When we're drawing ray diagrams, when you see a lens, a thick lens, usually refraction happens twice. So once upon entering the lens and then once upon leaving. The lenses we're going to be studying in this unit are called thin lenses, so we assume all the refraction happens once at the axis of symmetry. So when we draw our rays that refract, we're going to draw them all the way to the axis of symmetry, and then we do a refraction right after that. And we're just going to assume it happens once. It's an approximation, but that's okay, it works, instead of having to assume it happens twice like it does here. So keep in mind it does happen twice, but we'll make it happen once at the axis of symmetry because we're using thin lenses. It simplifies our ray diagrams a bit. When we're describing images in lenses, we're going to be using lost or salt as we normally do, and everything basically means the same thing as it usually does when it comes to mirrors, just as it would with lenses. So there's different rays that we can memorize. We're going to start with converging lenses or the convex lenses. One of the rays you can do is one that goes parallel to the principal axis, to the axis of symmetry, and that refracts so that it goes through the focal point on the other side. The other ray goes to the optical center, and that actually does not refract. It refracts so little you don't even notice it. So it goes straight through the optical center, and you just continue going through. The third ray is one that goes through the focal point, hits the axis of symmetry, and then reflects parallel to the principal axis. Very similar to mirrors. And what's interesting is that where these rays meet, that's where your image would be, and it would be inverted compared to the object. So those are your 3 rays you need to memorize. When you draw the rays, what's important is that you have your arrows pointing, here's your incident ray hitting the lens, and then you make another arrow showing your refracted ray moving away from the lens. Here, even though you don't see refraction, you should make an arrow going into the lens and an arrow going out, and here an arrow going into the lens and an arrow going out. So if you memorize those 3 rays, then you'll be able to draw any image for a lens that's convex or converging. Here, just some practice labeling and describing images. So if you had to describe the location, well, you'll see that the DO was way out here past the 2F, and the DI is in between F and 2F over here, this being your principal focus. So the DI is less than the DO. If you want to measure it, you can go from optical center to the object. From optical center to the image for DI, optical center to the object for DO. You can see the orientation is inverted. You can see that this is smaller, HI is smaller than HO, and you can also see that the image is real because it's made by real rays. Though the interesting thing is that even though it's real, it's on the opposite side of the lens, and that makes sense because the lens is see-through, so you can see objects and images on the other side. So we're going to explore different cases here. We'll explore the case where the object is beyond 2F, which is what we saw here. We'll see the case where the object is at 2F, where the object is between 2F and F, and then where the object is between F and the optical center. So those are the 5 cases we'll explore. For each of those cases, you should know how to draw ray diagrams. You should be able to reasonably predict where your image would end up based on those cases. It's very similar to the cases we saw for concave mirrors. Just this time, our images might be on opposite sides of the lens more often than not. So we're going to start with the case where the object is beyond 2F, and you can follow along on your page by drawing the ray diagrams. We're going to start with the first special ray where the ray goes parallel to the principal axis and it refracts as if refracts to go through the focal point. We'll do a ray that goes straight through the optical center, and that just keeps going straight. And then we'll do a ray that goes through the focal point on this side, so the secondary focus, and then it hits the axis of symmetry and then refracts parallel to the principal axis. This point here is where your image ends up. So whenever you're beyond 2f, you're going to get an image that ends up between f and 2f on the other side. So a little bit closer to the lens compared to the object. And it's going to be real because it's made by real rays. It's going to be inverted, and it's going to be smaller than the actual object itself. So if you remember that beyond 2f, you are going to end up in between f and 2f, and you're smaller, and you're real, and you're inverted, then your ray diagrams should be easy to verify once you're done. In reality, you only have to do 2 rays, the parallel and through the focus, and then through the focus and parallel, and then they would have met there. This third ray we did through the optical center is really just sort of a double check ray. So 2 rays is all that's required, but you can double check your work using a third ray. Then on each slide I have a little description of the application for that particular scenario. So you can see here that when you have objects that are more than 2f away, that is used by applications such as eyes and cameras. When your eye is looking at something more than 2f away, it's going to make something that's in between the f and 2f, and same thing with certain cameras as well. So for each of these cases, you'll see an application, and what's important is that you know how to explain why this case fits this application. The next case we're going to do is when the object is at 2f. So same thing, we're going to approach it, the ray diagrams the exact same way. You can try it yourself first, pause the video, then check your work. So if you've done that, now you're verifying your work. We do 1 ray parallel to the principal axis through the focal point, 1 ray to the optical center, all the way down without refracting, 1 ray through the focal point, and then parallel to the principal axis. And you'll notice that just like with converging mirrors, your image actually ends up at 2f as well. It's not directly below like it was in mirrors because that was reflection, but it's still at 2f on the other side. So if this was 5, then this is 10. So this is 10 away, and this is 10 away on the other side. You'll notice it's inverted. You'll notice it's real because it's made by real rays, and you'll notice that they're actually the same size. So same distance away, same size. So hi is equal to ho, and then do is equal to di. In terms of applications here, this is used by scanners and printers, so you can basically keep the same size. Now we're going to take a look at the situation where you have an object placed between 2f and f over here. So start off with the same idea that you're going to do a ray parallel to the principal axis through the focal point. You'll do a ray through the optical center. You'll do a ray through the, you could also do a ray through the focal point here, and then you can make it parallel. The thing is the lens might not be long enough to do it there, so that's why I only did 2 rays here. But the point is they met over here, and that's where your object, your image forms. So you have your di this time is greater than your do, so you're actually farther away from the lens. Your object is inverted. Your image is inverted. Your image is larger than your object, so hi is greater than ho, and it's still made by real rays. So that means that it is a real image. And some applications that this would be used for would be movie projectors and photographic enlargers. So when you have a projector project an image onto the screen, you want to make it larger. So that's why you'd have your object in between the 2f and f to make a larger image, as opposed to the same size or smaller. And also, it's nice that you have a real image, because real images are the ones that can be projected onto a screen. Next, we'll do the case where we have the object in between f and the lens, so in between f and the optical center. We'll do a ray that goes parallel to the principal axis and then through the focal point. And then we'll do a ray that goes through the optical center. And you'll notice that the refracted rays actually never cross here. They look like they're actually moving away from each other. But if you remember, you can always do traceback rays. And right here, where the tracebacks meet, that's where your image is going to be. And so what you'll notice is that your image is farther away from the lens in your object, so DI is greater than DO. Your image is large. It's large here. HI is larger than HO. It's made by traceback rays, so we have it as virtual, and then the image is also upright. So this is the only situation where you're going to get an upright image, very similar to converging mirrors. And like I said, it's virtual as well. And this is a situation where the image is on the same side as the object on the lens. And so where do we use this? Well, we use this in magnifying glasses. So when you use a magnifying glass to read something very small, that's actually the situation here where you get an upright, larger image. That's why it's not flipped, because your letters are placed, you bring it close enough so that the letters are basically in between F and the optical center. Also reading glasses. And then we'll take a look at the scenario where the object is at the focal point. And think about what happened when you were at the focal point for the concave mirror, or the converging mirror. We can do our ray parallel to the principal axis, go through the focus, and then go through the optical center. And you'll notice that the rays never meet here, and they're actually parallel to each other. So even if you draw the traceback rays are parallel to each other, so they'll never meet. So when you're at the focal point for a converging lens, not a diverging lens, but a converging lens, then you'll have no image form. And so there's not really an application for that. So this is a summary of the convex lenses or converging lenses, how they're used, what type of image you get, and also the location of the object. You should know how to find each of these, how to describe the images, and how to explain each of these applications very well. Again, more of a summary with some images next to it. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at the concave lens ray diagram, which is a bit simpler since it's only one specific type of image that'll form.